My son-in-law texted, "We're done with you forever. Never contact us again." My daughter just confirmed it. I smiled and calmly replied, "No problem." Then I quietly canceled every monthly payment, $2,400 for their house and cars. Weeks later, when the bank started calling and the bills piled up, they showed up at my door, begging me to turn it all back on. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Daniel Fisher. I'm 64 years old, retired financial consultant living in Scottsdale, Arizona. Spent 38 years helping people manage their money, plan for retirement, make smart investments. Never thought I'd need to use those skills against my own family. But here we are, 6 years. That's how long I've been bankrolling my daughter Rachel's life. Rachel and her husband Sean. My beautiful little girl who used to run to the door when I came home from work, squealing, "Daddy's home." Now she barely looks me in the eye. Sean Miller, my son-in-law, 37 years old, works as a mid-level manager at some tech company in Phoenix. When Rachel first brought him home 7 years ago, I thought he was decent enough. Ambitious, polite, had that firm handshake men of my generation appreciate. He called me sir for the first 6 months. That should have been my first warning sign. Nobody's that polite unless they want something. The change started slowly, like watching rust spread across chrome. You don't notice it happening until one day you realize the shine is gone. At first, Sean would thank me profusely when I helped with their down payment. "Mr. Fisher, I don't know how to thank you. We'll pay you back, I promise." $28,000 for their house on Canyon View Lane. Still waiting on that payback, by the way. Then came the car loans, both of them. Rachel's Honda Accord and Sean's Ford F-150. "Just until we get on our feet, Dad," Rachel said, squeezing my hand across the dinner table. Her eyes were so hopeful. How could I say no? Another $680 a month, automatic withdrawal from my account. The insurance policies, the Costco membership, the medical coverage I added them to through my retirement benefits. It all seemed like what a good father does. Take care of your kids, right? Even when they're adults. Even when your gut tells you they're taking advantage. I remember the exact moment I saw Sean's mask slip. We were at a barbecue at their place, maybe 2 years ago. One of Sean's coworkers made some joke about how Rachel had married up because their house was nicer than his apartment. Sean laughed and said, "Yeah, well, when you work hard and make smart choices, good things happen." Not a word about who actually made the down payment, not a single acknowledgement. Rachel was standing right there. She heard him. She said nothing. That's when I started keeping track, not out of spite. At least that's what I told myself. Professional habit. I'm a financial consultant. I track numbers. So I created a spreadsheet. Every payment, every dollar, every small favor that turned into another monthly obligation. The total grew like a tumor. $1,450 for their mortgage, $680 for both car loans, $270 for insurance premiums, $2,400 every single month, withdrawn automatically from my retirement account. Over 6 years, I'd pumped $172,800 into their life, not including the down payment, not including the furniture I bought when they moved in, not including the emergency cash I'd given Rachel when Sean's car needed repairs, or when they wanted to renovate their kitchen, or when they decided they needed a new 75-inch television. Speaking of that television, that's what did it. That's what finally made me see the whole picture clearly, like someone had wiped the fog off a mirror. It was a Saturday evening, early March. Rachel had invited me over for dinner, a rare occurrence these days. I should have known something was off when Sean greeted me at the door with that stiff smile, the one that doesn't reach his eyes. "Hey, Daniel, come on in." Not Dad, not Mr. Fisher anymore. Just Daniel, like I was some acquaintance he tolerated. The house smelled amazing. Rachel had made pot roast, my favorite. The table was set nicely. For a moment, I let myself believe this was real, that my daughter wanted to spend time with me, that we could be a family again. Then I walked into their living room and saw it. The television was massive, mounted on the wall like a black monolith. Had to be at least 75 inches, maybe 80. The kind of screen you see in sports bars. Sean was standing in front of it, remote in hand, grinning like a kid on Christmas morning. Check this out, Daniel. Just got it installed yesterday. 8K resolution, quantum dot display, 120 Hz refresh rate. Top of the line. Cost $3,200, but totally worth it. The picture quality is insane. Rachel was watching me from the kitchen doorway, wooden spoon in her hand. Something in her expression made my chest tight. Guilt? Embarrassment? Or was she just waiting to see if I'd ruin their dinner by saying something? I kept my voice casual. Friendly, even. Wow, that's quite an investment. Must have saved up for a while for something like that. Sean's grin faltered just a fraction. Well, you know, work bonus came through. Figured we deserved to treat ourselves. I nodded slowly, doing the math in my head. The same math I'd been doing for 6 years. That's great. Really great. Hey, random question. Did you guys ever get around to paying down those credit cards? Last time we talked, Rachel mentioned you had about $11,000 in high-interest debt. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Rachel's face went pale. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Sean like a drowning person looks at a life preserver. Sean's jaw clenched. He set down the remote very carefully, very deliberately. When he turned to face me, that polite mask was completely gone. What was underneath was something cold and hard. You know what, Daniel? This is exactly the problem. This right here. Every time we try to enjoy something, every time we make a decision about our own lives, you have to stick your nose in it. You have to make it about money, about debt, about what you think we should be doing. I held up my hands. Sean, I didn't mean... Yes, you did. You absolutely meant it. You can't help yourself. You think because you help us out sometimes, that gives you the right to control every aspect of our lives, to judge our choices, to make us feel like children who can't manage their own finances. That's not fair, I said quietly. I've never tried to control you. Really? Sean's voice was rising now. Really? Because from where I'm standing, it feels like every conversation, every family dinner, every phone call from you comes with strings attached. Little comments, little digs. Did you think about this? Have you considered that? Maybe you should be more responsible with money. Rachel had started crying silently, tears running down her cheeks while she just stood there, frozen. I looked at my daughter. Rachel, is this how you feel too? She wouldn't meet my eyes, just stared at the floor and whispered, Dad, you do kind of... sometimes it feels like you don't trust us to make our own decisions. Something cracked inside my chest. Not broke, not yet. Just cracked. A hairline fracture that I knew would spread. I stood up. My pot roast sat untouched on the plate. I should go. I'm sorry I upset you both. That genuinely wasn't my intention. Sean didn't apologize, didn't walk it back. Just stood there with his arms crossed, watching me gather my jacket. Rachel followed me to the door, still crying, but she didn't ask me to stay. Dad, I'm sorry. We just need... I know, I said. You need space. I get it. I drove home in silence. Didn't turn on the radio. Just listened to the sound of my own breathing and watched the streetlights blur past. When I got back to my house on Desert Bloom Drive, I went straight to my garage. To my 1967 Ford Mustang, the restoration project I'd been working on for 3 years. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, and let myself really think about what had just happened. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. Sean's really stressed about work. Let's talk soon, okay? I didn't respond. I just sat there in the growing darkness, surrounded by tools and car parts, and the smell of motor oil, and waited to see what would happen next. I didn't have to wait long. 2 days passed. 48 hours of silence from Rachel and Sean. I spent that time in my garage mostly, torque wrench in hand, rebuilding the Mustang's carburetor. There's something meditative about mechanical work. Every piece has a purpose. Every bolt has its place. Nothing is arbitrary. Unlike family relationships, apparently. My phone buzzed on the workbench. Tuesday afternoon, 3:47 p.m. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and picked it up. The message was from Sean. "We're done with you forever. Stop trying to control our lives. Never contact us again. We mean it." I read it 3 times, stared at those capital letters like they were some foreign language I needed to decode. Then Rachel's message came through, softer but just as final. "Dad, I think it's better this way. We need space to build our own life, without constant judgment. I hope you understand. Take care of yourself." I set the phone down, picked up the carburetor jet I'd been cleaning, put it back down, looked at my phone again. The words hadn't changed. My daughter had just cut me out of her life, over a comment about a television and credit card debt. For most fathers, this would be the moment of devastation. Tears, maybe. Anger. Desperate phone calls begging for reconciliation. But I'm not most fathers. I spent 38 years as a financial consultant. I've seen every variation of financial manipulation, dependency, and entitlement that exists. I've watched clients destroy their retirement trying to bail out ungrateful children. I've seen families implode over money. I just never thought I'd be living it. I sat down on my workbench stool and did something I should have done years ago. I pulled up my banking app and really looked at the numbers. Not just the spreadsheet I kept, the actual flow of money out of my retirement account. $2,400 every single month? Like clockwork. Automatic withdrawals that I'd set up 6 years ago and never questioned. Mortgage payment to Chase Bank for 892 Canyon View Lane, $1,450. Auto loan payment for Rachel's Honda, $340. Auto loan payment for Sean's F-150, $340. Insurance premiums, $270. Then there were the non-automatic expenses. The Costco membership I'd added them to, $120 annually. The family medical plan through my retirement benefits, roughly $400 per month that I hadn't even been counting. The random emergency transfers, $500 here, $800 there, $1,200 for the kitchen backsplash Rachel absolutely had to have. I pulled up my spreadsheet and started at adding. Really adding. Every email transfer. Every check I'd written. Every time Rachel called with a crisis and I'd opened my wallet. The number that appeared made me blink. $172,800 over 6 years. Plus the $28,000 down payment I'd given them as a wedding gift. Rounded up to $200,000 even. $200,000 I'd invested in my daughter's life. Her independence. Her marriage to a man who just told me to never contact them again. I started laughing. Couldn't help it. Not the bitter kind, more like the laugh you make when you finally understand the punchline of a joke that's been building for years. They wanted independence. They wanted to build their own life without my judgment and control. Perfect. I could give them that. My fingers hovered over my phone. Part of me, the father part, the part that still remembered 6-year-old Rachel with pigtails and scraped knees, wanted to call her, to apologize, to ask what I could do differently. But the other part of me, the part that had spent 4 decades watching people get manipulated and used, knew exactly what was happening here. Sean had convinced Rachel that my financial support came with invisible chains, that accepting help was the same as giving up autonomy, and rather than have an honest conversation about boundaries, they decided to blow up the whole relationship. Fine. I typed out my response to Sean's message. No problem. Good luck with everything. To Rachel, I wrote, I understand. I wish you both the best. Then I opened my banking app. Chase Bank Mortgage, automatic payment canceled. Honda Financial Auto Loan, automatic payment canceled. Ford Credit Auto Loan, automatic payment canceled. State Farm Insurance, automatic payment canceled. Each cancellation took about 30 seconds. Click, click, confirm. Years of financial support, erased with a few taps on a screen. I sat back and looked at what I'd done. Felt nothing. No guilt, no satisfaction. Just a strange calm, like I'd finally put down a weight I didn't realize I'd been carrying. They wanted independence. They were about to get a masterclass in it. I thought about calling my attorney, Gerald Torres, but decided against it. Not yet. This wasn't about legal maneuvering. This was simpler. Much simpler. I was just a father respecting his daughter's wishes. They wanted me out of their lives. I was getting out of their finances, too. Fair is fair. I went back to work on the Mustang, installed the rebuilt carburetor, torqued down the bolts, connected the fuel lines. The engine turned over on the third try, rumbling to life with that beautiful vintage growl. I let it run for a few minutes, listening to the steady rhythm, feeling the vibration through the concrete floor. My phone stayed silent. No frantic calls. No, wait, we didn't mean it that way. Nothing. Good. I pulled up my calendar. Today was March 18th. Their next mortgage payment was due April 1st. Car loans due the same day. Insurance renewal on April 5th. 2 weeks until they'd start noticing something was wrong. Maybe a little longer if they weren't paying attention to their automatic payment confirmations. Sean was the type to assume everything was running smoothly until a problem literally hit him in the face. I had time. Time to make absolutely sure all my legal bases were covered. Time to document everything. Time to prepare for whatever came next. Because something would come next. I knew it with the same certainty I knew the Mustang's engine would fire up every time I turned the key. Sean and Rachel lived beyond their means. Their combined take-home pay was maybe $6,800 a month, and with my support withdrawn, they'd be in the red by at least $2,000. Every single month. They'd figure it out eventually, and when they did, well, that would be interesting. I closed the garage door, walked back into my house, and poured myself 2 fingers of bourbon. Sat in my leather chair by the window, looking out at the desert sunset painting the sky orange and purple. My phone buzzed one more time. Rachel again. I know this is hard, Dad, but it's the right thing. We need to stand on our own feet. I smiled and took a sip of bourbon. You're about to get exactly what you asked for, sweetheart, I murmured to the empty room. Let's see how well you stand. The next morning I called Gerald Torres. Not because we were friends, we weren't. But his law firm had handled some estate planning for a few of my former clients, and they'd all spoken highly of him. I needed someone who specialized in family law and financial matters. Someone who could tell me exactly where the legal boundaries were. His office was downtown Phoenix, a sleek glass building on Monroe Street. The receptionist led me to a conference room with a view of the city sprawling out toward the mountains. Torres walked in 5 minutes later, a man in his early 50s, salt and pepper hair, expensive suit that actually fit properly. He shook my hand with the grip of someone who worked out regularly. Mr. Fisher, your message said this was about family financial support? I laid it out for him, all of it. The 6 years of payments, the $172,800 total, the text messages cutting me off, my cancellation of all automatic transfers. I showed him my spreadsheet, my bank statements, every piece of documentation I had. Torres listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Let me make sure I understand. You've been making voluntary payments on behalf of your adult daughter and son-in-law. No written agreement, no promissory notes, no contracts of any kind. Correct. And they're both employed adults with no disabilities or conditions that would legally obligate you to support them. Rachel's 34, Sean's 37, both working full-time, perfectly healthy. Torres nodded slowly. Then legally, Mr. Fisher, you have zero obligation to continue these payments. They were gifts, voluntary contributions. You can stop them anytime for any reason or no reason at all. Something in my chest loosened. You're certain? Completely. Arizona is a community property state, which affects how married couples share assets, but it doesn't create any legal duty for parents to support adult children. The fact that they explicitly told you they wanted no further contact actually strengthens your position. They severed the relationship. You're simply respecting their wishes. I smiled. Couldn't help it. So if they come back later, demanding I resume payments, they have no legal standing whatsoever. None. Torres pulled out a notepad. Though if you want my professional advice, I'd suggest documenting everything. Keep those text messages. Screenshot them, print them, save them in multiple places. Keep records of every payment you've made and when they stopped. If this turns contentious, and in my experience money disputes often do, you want an airtight paper trail. Already done, I said. I'm a financial consultant. Documentation's second nature. Good. Torres leaned forward. Mr. Fisher, may I ask what you're planning here? This feels less like a consultation and more like you're preparing for a specific outcome. I met his eyes. I'm preparing to let my daughter and son-in-law learn a valuable lesson about independence. That's all. No harassment, no threats, no illegal activity. Just removing my financial safety net and seeing what happens. Torres allowed himself a small smile. Well, from a legal standpoint, that's entirely within your rights. Just remember, if they do come back, if they ask for help, any agreement you make going forward should be in writing. Clear terms, clear expectations. Noted. I left his office feeling lighter than I had in days. Everything I'd done was legal. More than legal. It was completely justified. They'd cut me off. I was simply honoring their decision. That afternoon, I tackled the rest of the loose ends. I called my insurance company and removed Rachel and Sean from my family medical plan. The representative was sympathetic when I explained my daughter was getting her own coverage through her employer. Now, no questions asked. Savings, $400 per month. Then I logged into Costco's website and removed them from my membership. That felt petty almost. But it was also $120 annually they could pay for themselves if they wanted bulk toilet paper and discount gasoline. I went through my bank statements line by line, looking for any other automatic payments or subscriptions I might have forgotten. Found one, a $15 monthly charge for a streaming service Sean had asked me to add to my account just temporarily, 3 years ago. Canceled. By evening, I'd severed every financial connection except one, the mortgage payment, car loans, and insurance that I'd already canceled. Those were the big ones. Those were the ones that would matter. I stood in my kitchen, looking at my phone, half expecting a call. Surely someone at the bank would have notified them by now that the automatic payments had stopped. Surely they'd seen the confirmation emails. Nothing. Either they hadn't checked their email, or they'd seen it and assumed it was some kind of error they'd deal with later. Sean struck me as the type who'd ignore a problem until it became a crisis, especially if acknowledging it meant admitting how dependent they'd been on me. I went out to the garage. The Mustang was coming along beautifully. I'd replaced most of the engine components, rebuilt the transmission, restored the interior. What remained was mostly cosmetic work, body panels, paint, chrome, but mechanically she was sound, strong, independent, unlike some people. The first week passed quietly, too quietly. I kept expecting my phone to ring, kept waiting for some angry text from Sean, some tearful voice message from Rachel, but there was nothing. Radio, silence. It was unnerving, actually, like watching a demolition countdown and waiting for the explosion. I filled the time with research. I wanted to understand exactly what would happen to them when the payments stopped hitting. So I looked up foreclosure timelines in Arizona, researched auto repossession laws, read through credit reporting regulations. The picture that emerged was worse than I'd imagined, or better, depending on your perspective. First missed mortgage payment, a late fee of around $75, plus a phone call from the lender. No big deal. People miss payments occasionally. Second missed payment, more late fees, more serious phone calls, a formal notice of delinquency. Third missed payment, that's when things got real. The lender would file a notice of trustee's sale. In Arizona, foreclosure could happen fast, as little as 90 days from the first missed payment to auction. The car loans would be similar but faster. Miss 2 payments, and they'd start threatening repossession. Miss Three and a tow truck would show up in the middle of the night. I did the math. Today was the 23rd. Their mortgage payment was due on the 1st of next month, which was 9 days away. If they had enough in their checking account to cover it manually, they might squeak by for 1 month, but that would drain their cash reserves, and then the next month would come, and the month after that. Eventually the math would catch up to them. It always did. I poured myself another bourbon and sat in my leather chair, watching the sun set over the desert. The sky was doing that thing it does in Arizona, turning shades of orange and pink and purple that looked too vivid to be real. My phone sat on the side table, silent. I picked it up and scrolled through old photos. Rachel as a baby. Rachel's first day of school. Rachel at her high school graduation, beaming at the camera with her whole life ahead of her. Rachel at her wedding 7 years ago. She'd looked so happy, so in love. I'd walked her down the aisle, put her hand in Sean's, welcomed him to our family. And now here I was, systematically dismantling the financial foundation I'd built for them. Was I doing the right thing? Or was I just a bitter old man punishing his daughter for choosing her husband over her father? I stared at that wedding photo for a long time. Then I remembered Sean's face at that barbecue. The way he'd taken credit for their success without acknowledging my contribution. The way he'd looked at me during that dinner, not with anger, but with contempt, like I was some obstacle to overcome rather than someone who'd given them everything. I remembered Rachel's text. We need to stand on our own feet. Fine, let them stand. I deleted the photo album from my favorites and set down my phone. Tomorrow, I'd go back to the garage, back to my Mustang, back to building something that would last. The mortgage payment came due on the 1st. I knew because I'd marked it on my calendar in red ink, circled it, like marking the date of an approaching storm. I spent that morning working on the Mustang's body panels, sanding down rust spots, filling in dents, methodical work that kept my hands busy and my mind focused. But every hour or so, I'd check my phone. Still nothing. Either they'd scraped together enough cash to make the payment manually, or they were about to discover a very unpleasant surprise. 3 days later, I got my answer. I was having coffee at a diner near my house, one of those old-school places with vinyl booths and waitresses who call everyone hone, when I saw her. Rachel. She was at the grocery store across the parking lot, pushing a cart toward her Honda. Even from a distance, I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she moved with jerky, stressed motions. I watched her load groceries into her trunk. Generic brands, I noticed. Store-brand cereal, no-name pasta. The kind of shopping you do when you're counting every dollar. She didn't see me, just got in her car and drove away, and I sat there with my cooling coffee thinking about what I'd just witnessed. Rachel had never been a bargain shopper. She was a Whole Foods girl. Organic everything, premium brands. The fact that she was at a budget grocery store buying generic products told me everything I needed to know. They were feeling the squeeze. The thought should have made me feel something. Guilt, maybe. Satisfaction, but mostly I just felt curious, like a scientist watching an experiment unfold. I paid for my coffee and drove home. Spent the afternoon online researching the next phase. Because if they were going to come crawling back, and they would, eventually, I needed to be ready. I started with property law, specifically quitclaim deeds. It's a legal instrument that transfers ownership of property from one party to another. No warranties, no guarantees. Just a simple transfer of whatever interest the grantor has. In other words, if I wanted to, I could make helping them conditional on them signing over the deed to their house. It would be legal. It would be binding. And it would teach them a lesson they'd never forget about the real cost of independence. But I wasn't there yet. That was thinking too far ahead. I called another lawyer, not Torres this time, but a real estate attorney named Morrison, whose name I'd found online. Made an appointment for the following week to discuss options. Just exploring possibilities. Just being prepared. The weekend came and went. Still no contact from Rachel or Sean. I drove past their house on Sunday afternoon. Told myself I was just taking a different route to the hardware store. Their cars were both in the driveway. The lawn needed mowing. The garbage cans from trash day were still on the curb, even though pickup had been 2 days ago. Small things. Signs of stress creeping in. On Monday morning, I received an email from Chase Bank. Not to me personally, it was one of those promotional emails they send to customers. But I'd set up the mortgage payments through my account, which meant I was still on their mailing list for that property. The email's subject line, "Reminder, your payment is past due." So they'd missed it. They hadn't scraped together the money. The mortgage payment for 892 Canyon View Lane was officially late. I deleted the email and went back to my coffee. That afternoon, my neighbor Trevor stopped by. Trevor King, former police officer, retired about the same time I did. We weren't close friends, but we'd shared beers on the back patio a few times, talked about sports and retirement and the general state of the world. "Hey, Daniel, got a minute?" "Sure. What's up?" Trevor scratched the back of his neck, looking uncomfortable. "Look, this might be none of my business, but I ran into your daughter yesterday. At the bank. She looked rough, man, like she'd been crying. And when she saw me, she practically ran the other way." I kept my expression neutral. "We're going through a difficult patch." "Yeah, I figured. She mentioned something to the teller about missed payments. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but it was a small branch, and—" Trevor trailed off. "You doing okay?" "I'm fine, Trevor. Thanks for asking." He studied me for a moment. Cop instincts still sharp, even in retirement. "All right. Just wanted to check. You know where to find me if you need anything." After he left, I stood in my driveway for a long time, thinking. Rachel had been at the bank, trying to sort out the missed payment, which meant she'd discovered that automatic payment was canceled, which meant she knew I'd done this deliberately, and she still hadn't called. Pride. That's what it was. She and Sean had burned the bridge, told me never to contact them, and now they couldn't bring themselves to admit they needed my help. They were probably scrambling, trying to figure out how to make up the difference without asking the father they'd cut off. Good. Let them scramble. I went back inside and made dinner. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, a glass of red wine. Ate it slowly, savoring each bite. My phone sat on the table, screen dark. That night, I pulled out a legal pad and started making notes. Not a plan exactly, more like a framework, a set of principles for when they inevitably came back. First, any help I provided would be documented. Contracts, clear terms, no more handshake agreements or verbal promises. Second, there would be consequences for their behavior. Not punitive, I'm not vindictive, but educational. They needed to understand that actions have results. Third, the power dynamic would shift. I was done being the desperate father begging for scraps of attention. If they wanted my help, they'd ask for it properly, with humility, with honesty. I looked at my notes and felt something shift inside me. For 6 years I'd been reactive, responding to their requests, opening my wallet whenever they called, playing the role of the generous but slightly pathetic father who couldn't say no. That version of me was gone. The man who remained was someone different. Someone who understood that love doesn't mean being a doormat, that helping someone sometimes means letting them fall. I folded up the legal pad and put it in my desk drawer next to the folder containing all my financial documentation. Everything organized, everything ready. They'd broken the relationship. They'd demanded independence. And when they came back, because they would come back, I'd give them a choice. Learn the lesson and rebuild on honest terms, or face the consequences alone. Either way, I'd be fine. The Mustang didn't need them. My retirement didn't need them. My life didn't need them. But they needed me. They just didn't know how much yet. I smiled at that thought, poured another glass of wine, and waited for the inevitable to unfold. Another month crawled by. May turned into June, and Arizona heat settled over Scottsdale like a blanket. I kept working on the Mustang. The bodywork was nearly complete. I'd stripped the old paint, fixed every dent, welded patches where rust had eaten through the quarter panels. Now she was in primer, waiting for the final paint job. I'd chosen the color weeks ago. Guardsman blue, same as the original 1967 model. Classic. Honest. Unlike certain people in my life. My phone rang one afternoon while I was wet sanding the hood. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Mr. Fisher? This is Linda Wright from Chase Bank. I'm calling about the property at 892 Canyon View Lane. I set down my sanding block. Yes? Our records show you as the primary contact for automatic payments on this mortgage. Those payments stopped approximately 2 months ago. The account is now 3 payments in arrears, totaling $8,750, plus late fees and penalties. We've attempted to contact the homeowners multiple times, but I'm not the homeowner, I said calmly. That would be Rachel Miller and Sean Miller. They're my daughter and son-in-law. I was helping them with payments as a gift, but that arrangement has ended. A pause. I could hear typing. I see. The thing is, Mr. Fisher, that automatic payment was set up through your account, so you're still listed as... I canceled those payments. If Rachel and Sean want to continue paying their mortgage, they'll need to set up their own payment method. I'm no longer involved. More typing. Then carefully. Mr. Fisher, I should inform you that we've filed a notice of trustee's sale. The property is scheduled for foreclosure auction on July 15th, unless the full arrears amount is paid. If you have any influence with the homeowners, I don't. Good luck with your collection efforts. I hung up and looked at my phone. July 15th. That was 5 weeks away. The clock was ticking louder now. That evening, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Dad, please, I need to talk to you. It's important. I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back, I respect your decision about independence. Good luck. Immediately, 3 dots appeared. She was typing. The dots disappeared. Appeared again. Disappeared. Finally, Dad, I know you're angry, but we're in real trouble. The bank is threatening to take our house. We can't afford the payments without... We didn't realize... I watched the screen, waited. Please call me, please. I turned off my phone and went to the garage. Spent the next 2 hours applying primer to the Mustang's doors. Smooth, even coats. Taking my time, getting it perfect. The next day I drove past their house again. This time I saw something different. One of their cars was gone. The Honda. Rachel's car. In the driveway sat only Sean's F-150, and even that looked different somehow. Dirty. Neglected. I didn't stop, just noted the detail and kept driving. Trevor caught me the following weekend while I was mowing my lawn. Hey, Daniel, you hear about your daughter's car? I shut off the mower. No. What about it? Got repossessed. Thursday night. Tow truck came around 11 p.m. Whole neighborhood heard the commotion. Sean came running out in his pajamas, yelling at the driver. Rachel was crying on the porch. Trevor's face was troubled. Man, I know you two are having issues, but that's rough. They made their choices, I said. I'm respecting those choices. Trevor looked at me for a long moment. Sure, just if you need to talk, you know where I am. After he left, I stood in my driveway, garden hose in hand, watering the desert plants that didn't really need watering. 1 car down. The financial vice was tightening. I went inside and pulled out my legal pad, added a new note to my framework. Quitclaim deed, non-negotiable. House ownership transfers to me. They can live as tenants. It was harsh. I knew it was harsh. But they demanded independence, and independence meant consequences. My phone buzzed again that night. Sean this time. Daniel, we need to talk. Man to man. This has gone too far. I almost laughed. Man to man. Now he wanted to have a conversation. After telling me we were done forever. I typed back, You told me never to contact you. I'm honoring that request. His response came fast. That was a mistake. I was angry. We both were. But we can work this out. We just need some help getting caught up on payments. Temporary help. Temporary. Always temporary with Sean. I wish you both the best, I replied, but I'm not in a position to help. That was a lie, of course. I had plenty of money. My retirement was solid. My investments were sound. My pension covered all my expenses with room to spare. I absolutely could help them. I just wasn't going to. Not yet. Not until they learned what they needed to learn. Sean's next message was longer. Fine, be that way. But you should know. Rachel cries every night. She barely eats. She thinks this is all her fault. Your own daughter is falling apart, and you don't even care. What kind of father does that? I read that message 3 times. Each time I felt a different emotion. Guilt, anger, then something colder, clearer. I typed carefully. What kind of daughter tells her father she's done with him forever? What kind of son-in-law sends a message in all caps saying never to contact them again? You both made this choice. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. A life independent of me. Congratulations. I blocked Sean's number. Then after a moment's hesitation, I blocked Rachel's too. They needed to understand that words have consequences, that you can't burn bridges and then expect to walk back across them whenever it's convenient. The house was very quiet after that. 3 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon, I was in the garage finishing the Mustang's final paint coat when I heard a car pull up outside. Not in my driveway, on the street. Engine running, voices. I walked to the garage door and looked out. A tow truck was parked in front of my house, and behind it, being loaded onto the flatbed with mechanical efficiency, was Sean's F-150. Sean himself was standing on the sidewalk in his work clothes, wrinkled khakis and a button-down shirt that looked like he'd slept in it. His face was red, veins standing out on his neck as he shouted at the tow truck driver, "You can't do this! I have rights! I'm only 2 payments behind." The driver, a thick-shouldered man in coveralls, didn't even look at him. Just worked the hydraulics, tilting the flatbed, securing the truck with practiced ease. 3 payments, the driver said calmly, and we sent 4 notices. You're lucky we didn't come sooner. I need that truck for work. How am I supposed to get to work? Not my problem, buddy. Take it up with Ford Credit. I watched Sean's face cycle through emotions. Rage, desperation, and finally something that looked like defeat. His shoulders slumped. His hands fell to his sides. Then he turned and saw me standing in my garage. Our eyes met across the distance. 30 yards maybe, but it felt like miles. Sean's expression changed. The defeat morphed into something uglier. His face twisted and he started walking toward me, fast, aggressive. "This is your fault," he shouted. "You did this. You're destroying our lives because your pride got hurt." I didn't move, just stood there, shop rag in hand, and waited. Sean stopped at the edge of my driveway, smart enough not to actually step onto my property at least. He was shaking, I noticed, hands trembling, sweat on his forehead despite the early evening cool. "All you had to do was keep helping us," he said, voice cracking. "Just keep doing what you'd been doing. But no, you had to make a point. You had to punish us for wanting our own life." "I gave you your own life," I said quietly. "This is what it looks like. This isn't independence. This is sabotage. You canceled everything. The house payments, the car payments, the insurance, everything. You left us with nothing. I left you with exactly what you brought to the relationship. Your jobs, your salaries, your ability to stand on your own feet, like Rachel said you wanted to do." I paused. "How's that working out?" Sean's face went from red to almost purple. "You smug son of a—" "Careful," I said. "You're on my property line. And Trevor over there." I nodded toward my neighbor's house, where Trevor had conveniently appeared on his porch. "Is a retired cop who'd be happy to report any threats you make." Sean glanced at Trevor, looked back at me. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. "We're going to lose the house," he said finally, voice flat, dead. "Auction's in 3 weeks. We've maxed out our credit cards trying to make payments, borrowed from friends, sold everything we could sell. We have nothing left, Daniel. Nothing. And you know what? You win. Okay? You win. Is that what you wanted to hear?" Behind him, the tow truck pulled away, carrying his F-150 into the sunset. Sean didn't even turn to watch it go. "I don't want to win," I said. "I want you to understand something very simple. When you tell someone you're done with them forever, you don't get to come back when it's convenient. You don't get to demand they save you from consequences you created. We didn't create this. You did. No, Sean. I created a safety net. You cut it. And now you're surprised you're falling. I folded my arms. Where's Rachel? Something in his face shifted, crumbled. Home. Crying. Again. She wanted to come here to beg you, but I told her I'd handle it. That I could fix this. He laughed, bitter and broken. Can't even do that, right? For just a moment, just a flicker, I felt something like sympathy. He looked so lost, so completely out of his depth. This was a man who'd spent 6 years coasting on someone else's generosity and never once stopped to consider what would happen if it ended. Then I remembered his text message. We're done with you forever. The sympathy evaporated. Tell Rachel I hope she finds her independence, I said. You both wanted it so badly. Now you have it. I turned and walked back into my garage. Behind me, I heard Sean make a sound, half sob, half shout. But he didn't follow. A minute later, I heard footsteps on the street, fading away. Trevor appeared in my garage doorway 5 minutes later. That was cold, Daniel. That was necessary, I replied, picking up my paintbrush. They needed to learn. Learn what? How to be homeless? I looked at him. Learn that actions have consequences. Learn that independence means more than just not having someone ask questions about your spending. Learn that you can't treat people like ATMs and then act surprised when they close the account. Trevor shook his head. Your daughter's suffering because of this. My daughter made a choice. She chose her husband's pride over her father's support. I'm respecting that choice. I dipped the brush in Guardsman blue paint. She knows where I live, Trevor. If she wants help, she knows how to ask for it. What if she's too proud to ask? Then she's more like me than I thought. I applied paint to the Mustang's quarter panel, smooth, even strokes, and eventually pride won't be enough to keep the lights on. Trevor left, shaking his head. I finished painting until the light faded, then cleaned my brushes and closed the garage door. Inside my house, I poured bourbon and sat in my leather chair, pulled out my phone and unblocked Rachel's number, just in case. The phone stayed silent for 2 hours. Then at 9:47 p.m. it rang. Rachel's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, I answered. Hi, Rachel. Silence, then crying. Soft, broken sobs that made something in my chest hurt despite everything. Dad, she whispered finally. Please, we need help. I'm so sorry. We were so stupid. Please. I closed my eyes. Are you ready to listen to my terms? Yes. Anything. Just please don't let us lose our house. I'll think about it, I said. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up before she could respond. Set the phone on the table and took a long drink of bourbon. Tomorrow I'd lay out my conditions. The quitclaim deed, the financial oversight, the written apology from Sean. Tomorrow, the real lesson would begin. Tonight, I'd let them think about how close they were to losing everything. The Mustang sat in the garage, gleaming in fresh blue paint, almost restored, almost complete, just like my plan. I called Rachel the next morning at exactly 10 a.m., let her wait the full 12 hours I'd promised. When she answered on the first ring, her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying all night. Dad? Come to my house today, I said. You and Sean, 2 o'clock. We'll talk. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll be there? I hung up. Didn't need to hear the gratitude. Not yet. They hadn't earned it. I spent the next few hours preparing. Not physically. The house was clean. The coffee was made. But mentally, running through what I was going to say. How I was going to say it. This conversation would set the tone for everything that came after. I also made a phone call to Gerald Torres. Mr. Fisher, I was wondering when I'd hear from you again. I need you here this afternoon, 2:30, my house, and I need you to bring a quitclaim deed form for 892 Canyon View Lane in Scottsdale. A pause. Your daughter's house. My daughter's former house, I corrected, if she agrees to my terms. Understood. I'll be there. At 1:55, a car pulled into my driveway. Not their Honda, that was gone. Not Sean's truck, also gone. A beat-up Toyota Corolla that I didn't recognize. Borrowed from a friend, probably. Or maybe a rental they couldn't afford. I watched from the window as they got out. Rachel looked like she'd aged 5 years and 4 months. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, clothes that hung loose on her frame. She'd lost weight. Sean was worse. Unshaven, rumpled shirt. The kind of exhausted that comes from not sleeping, not eating right, stress grinding you down day after day. Good. I opened the door before they could knock. Come in. They followed me into the living room like prisoners walking to sentencing. Rachel's eyes were already wet. Sean wouldn't meet my gaze. I gestured to the couch. Sit. They sat. I remained standing. Power dynamics matter in negotiations, and this was definitely a negotiation. So, I said, you need help. Rachel nodded, tears spilling over. Dad, we're so sorry. We were wrong. Sean was wrong to send that message, and I was wrong to support it. We didn't understand. You didn't understand that I was paying for your entire life? I kept my voice level, clinical. Because I find that hard to believe, Rachel. You're not stupid. You knew the money was coming from somewhere. Sean finally spoke, voice rough. We thought we were contributing. We thought the payments were split or something. We didn't realize it was all you. Every single payment. I laughed, actually laughed. You thought you were paying half a mortgage on a house you could barely afford on your own salaries. You thought you were paying for 2 car loans while maxing out credit cards? Come on, Sean. You knew. You just didn't want to acknowledge it because that would mean admitting you were completely dependent on me. His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Couldn't argue. The auction is in 2 weeks, Rachel whispered. The bank said if we don't pay the full amount, $87.50 plus penalties, they'll sell our house. We've tried everything, borrowed from everyone we know, maxed every card. We have nowhere left to turn, except me, except you. She looked up, and the desperation in her eyes was almost painful to see. Please, Dad, I know we don't deserve it. I know we were terrible to you. But please, we'll do anything. We'll pay you back. We'll... Stop. I held up a hand. Let's be very clear about something. You won't pay me back. You can't. Even if you dedicated every spare dollar to it, at your current income, it would take you decades to repay what you owe me. And that's assuming I didn't charge interest. Sean's face went pale. How much do we owe you? I pulled out a folder from the side table. Opened it. Inside was my spreadsheet, printed and highlighted. 6 years of payments, broken down by category. Total financial support provided, $200,800. That's the down payment, monthly mortgage payments, car loans, insurance, medical coverage, Costco membership, streaming services, and various emergency cash transfers. Not including the furniture I bought you, or the wedding gift, or countless dinners I paid for. I set the spreadsheet on the coffee table between us. They stared at it like it was a death sentence. Now, I continued, your current debt situation, mortgage arrears, $8,750, credit card debt, $18,600, personal loans from friends, approximately $3,000 based on what Sean mentioned to Trevor. Plus, you've lost both cars, so you'll need transportation. Total immediate financial crisis. Roughly $31,200. Rachel was crying openly now. Sean looked like he might be sick. I can help you, I said. But understand this. Helping you will cost me money I don't have to spend. Money I could use for my retirement, my hobbies, my life. So if I'm going to do this, it's going to be on my terms. Non-negotiable terms. Do you understand? They both nodded, too broken to do anything else. Good. I checked my watch. My attorney will be here in 20 minutes to make this official. Until then, I'll explain what's going to happen. I sat down in my leather chair, facing them across the coffee table. This was the moment I'd been building toward for months. The moment when the power balance shifted permanently. Here are my conditions, I said. 3 of them. You will agree to all 3 or you get nothing from me. Clear? Clear, Sean said. Rachel just nodded. First condition, I will pay off all your debts. The mortgage arrears, the credit cards, the personal loans, $31,200 total. I will also provide you with a used car, nothing fancy but reliable transportation. In exchange, you will sign a quitclaim deed, transferring full ownership of 892 Canyon View. Lane to me. The house becomes mine. You will live there as tenants, paying me $800 per month in rent. That's roughly half what your mortgage payment was, so it's generous. But the house is mine. If you ever want to leave, you leave. The property stays with me. Sean's hands were shaking. Rachel looked like she'd been slapped. Second condition, I continued. Every month you will provide me with a complete financial report. Every purchase, every bill, every dollar spent. I want receipts. I want bank statements. I want total transparency. You wanted to prove you could stand on your own feet? Fine. Show me. Prove you can manage money responsibly. This continues for a minimum of 2 years. If you refuse or fail to comply, the rent goes up to market rate, about $1,500 a month, and I reserve the right to evict you with 60 days' notice. That's... Sean started, then stopped. What could he say? That it was invasive? Controlling? Yeah, that was exactly the point. Third condition. I looked directly at Sean. You will write a formal letter of acknowledgement and apology. In this letter, you will detail every payment I made on your behalf over the past 6 years. You will acknowledge that without my financial support, you would not have been able to afford your house, your cars, or your lifestyle. You will apologize for the disrespect you showed me, specifically referencing the text message where you told me we were done forever. This letter will be witnessed and signed in the presence of my attorney, Gerald Torres, and my neighbor, Trevor King. I will keep this document. It's insurance against future misunderstandings. The room was absolutely silent. Sean's face had gone from pale to red. His fists were clenched. I could see him struggling, pride warring with desperation. He wanted to tell me to go to hell, wanted to walk out. But he couldn't, because without me, they'd be homeless in 2 weeks. Those are my terms, I said. Take them or leave them. Rachel grabbed Sean's arm. We'll take them, she said quickly. Right, Sean, we'll take them. Sean looked at her, looked at me, and something in him broke. His shoulders slumped. His head dropped. Yeah, he said, voice barely audible. We'll take them. I smiled, not warmly, but with satisfaction. Smart choice. The doorbell rang, right on schedule. I stood and walked to the door. Gerald Torres stood on my porch, briefcase in hand. Mr. Fisher, ready to proceed? Come in, Gerald, I said. Let's make this official. Gerald Torres set his briefcase on my dining room table and pulled out a stack of documents. He was all business, but I caught the slight raise of his eyebrow when he saw Rachel and Sean huddled on my couch like defendants awaiting verdict. Mr. Miller, Mrs. Miller, he said formally. I'm Gerald Torres, Mr. Fisher's attorney. I understand you're here to negotiate terms of financial assistance. Sean just nodded. Rachel said, Yes, sir. Torres pulled out the quitclaim deed first, the most important document, the one that would transfer legal ownership of their house to me. This is a quitclaim deed for the property at 892 Canyon View Lane, Scottsdale, Arizona, currently in the names of Rachel Miller and Sean Miller. By signing this document, you transfer all ownership interest to Daniel Fisher. Do you understand what this means? We understand, Rachel whispered. You understand that you will no longer own this property? That Mr. Fisher will be the legal owner and you will be tenants? Yes. Torres looked at Sean. Mr. Miller, I need verbal confirmation from both of you. Sean's jaw worked. I could see the war happening behind his eyes. This was the moment, the point of no return. Once he signed that deed, he'd be admitting, legally, officially, that he couldn't provide for his own family, that he needed me, that all his talk about independence had been exactly that. Just talk. Mr. Miller? Torres prompted again. I understand, Sean finally said. The words sounded like they were being dragged out of him with pliers. Good. Torres slid the document across the table. I'll need both signatures, here, here, and here. I'll notarize them. Rachel signed first. Her hand trembled so badly she could barely hold the pen, but she signed. Then she pushed the document to Sean. He stared at it for a long moment. I watched his face cycle through emotions. Anger, shame, resignation. Finally, he picked up the pen and signed. 3 signatures, quick, like ripping off a bandage. Torres notarized each signature with professional efficiency, then slid the completed deed back into his briefcase. That's done, he said. Mr. Fisher, the property is now legally yours. I'll file this with the county recorder's office on Monday. I felt a surge of something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, exactly. More like closure. The house they'd been so proud of, the house I'd paid for, was now officially mine. They'd tried to cut me out of their lives, and in doing so, they'd lost the thing they valued most. The irony wasn't lost on me. Next item, Torres said, pulling out another document. Rental agreement, standard terms. $800 monthly rent, due on the 1st of each month. 60-day notice required for termination by either party. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, you'll both need to sign as tenants. They signed that too. Faster this time. They knew resistance was pointless. Then Torres produced a blank piece of paper and a pen, setting them in front of Sean. And now, Mr. Miller, I understand you need to write a letter of acknowledgement and apology. Mr. Fisher has outlined the requirements. You can write it here, in front of witnesses. Sean looked at the blank page like it was a snake. Right now? Yes, I said. Right now. Torres is here. Trevor will be here in, I checked my watch, 5 minutes. You write the letter, they witness it, and we're done. What exactly do you want me to say? His voice was tight, controlled, barely holding back rage. I pulled out my phone and read from my notes. I want you to acknowledge every major payment I made. The down payment, the monthly mortgage payments, the car loans, the insurance. I want you to acknowledge that without my support, you couldn't have afforded your lifestyle. And I want you to apologize specifically for telling me we were done forever and never to contact you again. Include the date you sent that message. You want me to humiliate myself. I want you to tell the truth. I met his eyes. Is it humiliating? Maybe. But it's also accurate, every word of it. Sean grabbed the pen. For a second I thought he might throw it at me. Instead, he pulled the paper closer and started writing. Fast, angry strokes. The pen pressed so hard it nearly tore the paper. Rachel watched him, tears still streaming down her face. She reached over and touched his arm, but he shook her off. Too angry? Too broken? The doorbell rang again. I answered it to find Trevor standing there, looking confused. Daniel, you said you needed me. Come in, Trevor. I need you to witness something. I led him to the dining room. He took in the scene, Torres with his briefcase, Rachel crying, Sean writing furiously, and his expression shifted from confusion to understanding. What's going on here? Justice, I said simply. Sean's writing a letter acknowledging the financial support I provided it over the years. I need you and Gerald to witness his signature. Trevor looked uncomfortable. Daniel, I'm not sure I should be involved in... Please, Trevor, as a favor, you're a neutral party. You saw what happened with the cars. You know what's been going on. I just need you to witness that Sean wrote this of his own free will and that I didn't coerce him. Trevor sighed. All right, but only because I think you're both acting like fools, and maybe this will finally end it. Sean finished writing and shoved the paper across the table. There, happy? I picked it up and read it. The handwriting was angry, sharp angles, heavy pressure, but the words were all there. To whom it may concern, I, Sean Miller, acknowledge that from 2019 to 2025, Daniel Fisher provided substantial financial support to myself and my wife, Rachel Miller. This support included a $28,000 down payment for our house at 892 Canyon View Lane, monthly mortgage payments of $1,450, monthly car loan payments totaling $680, monthly insurance premiums of $270, and various other expenses, including medical coverage, memberships, and emergency cash. Without Mr. Fisher's financial support, we would not have been able to afford our house, our vehicles, or our lifestyle. I acknowledge that we were completely dependent on his generosity. On March 18th of 2025, I sent Mr. Fisher a text message stating, "We're done with you forever. Stop trying to control our lives. Never contact us again." This message was disrespectful, ungrateful, and wrong. I apologize for sending it and for the pain it caused. I recognize that the financial crisis my family now faces is a direct result of losing Mr. Fisher's support that we took for granted and failed to appreciate. Signed, Sean Miller. It was perfect. Bitter, angry, but perfect. Every word I'd wanted was there. "Sign it," I said. "Date it. Torres and Trevor will witness." Sean signed. Torres and Trevor signed beneath his signature as witnesses. Torres took a photo of the completed letter with his phone, then handed the original to me. "For your records, Mr. Fisher." I folded the letter carefully and slid it into my folder, right next to my spreadsheet, right next to all the bank statements and payment records, complete documentation of their dependence, their ingratitude, their fall, and their submission. "We're done here," I said. "Gerald, thank you. Trevor, I appreciate you coming. Sean, Rachel, I'll transfer the money to pay off your debts by Monday. The bank will have the foreclosure stopped. You can pick up your rental car on Tuesday. I'll text you the address of the dealership. Keys will be waiting." Rachel stood up suddenly. "Dad, thank you. Thank you so much. I know we don't deserve—" "You don't," I interrupted. "But you're my daughter. And despite everything, I don't want to see you homeless. So I'm helping. On my terms." She nodded, wiping her eyes. Sean stood too. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Hatred? Respect? Maybe both. "I won't forget this," he said quietly. "I'm counting on it," I replied. They left. Torres and Trevor followed shortly after, and I stood alone in my living room, holding the folder that contained their signed surrender. I'd done it. Taken everything they'd valued, made them acknowledge their dependence, and restructured the relationship entirely on my terms. They wanted independence. I'd shown them what it actually cost, and now they'd spend years proving they could handle it, under my watchful eye, in my house, following my rules. The Mustang was almost finished, just needed the final polish, the chrome installed, the interior detailed, just like this situation. Almost complete, almost perfect. I poured myself a bourbon and raised the glass to the empty room. "To lessons learned," I said, and I smiled. The next morning I transferred the money. All of it. $31,200 from my retirement account into various creditor accounts. Chase Bank for the mortgage arrears. 3 different credit card companies. 2 personal loan recipients, whose names Sean had given me. Each transaction came with a note. Payment on behalf of Sean and Rachel Miller. Account satisfied in full. By Monday afternoon, the foreclosure was officially canceled. I received the confirmation email from Chase while I was installing the chrome trim on the Mustang's grille. The auction date was removed from the calendar. The notice of trustees' sale withdrawn. Their house, my house now, was safe. On Tuesday, I drove to a used car dealership in Mesa, paid $4,800 cash for a 2015 Toyota Camry with 87,000 miles. Nothing fancy. Gray, reliable, economical, perfect for people learning to live within their means. I left the keys with the sales manager and texted Rachel the address. "Your transportation is ready. Ask for Mike. Keys are in his office." Her response came immediately. "Thank you, Dad. We'll pick it up this afternoon." No effusive gratitude, no excessive apologies. Just acknowledgement. Good. They were learning. The quitclaim deed was filed with the Maricopa County Recorder's Office on Wednesday. I received the official stamped copy in the mail that Friday. The property at 892 Canyon View Lane Scottsdale, Arizona, was now legally and irrevocably mine. I hung the deed on my garage wall, right next to my toolbox, a reminder of what happens when people mistake generosity for weakness. The first financial report arrived the following Monday. Rachel emailed it, a detailed Excel spreadsheet, with every expense categorized and documented. Rent, utilities, groceries, gas, personal items, every receipt scanned and attached. I reviewed it carefully. They'd spent $2,847 that month. Rent to me was $800. Utilities $340. Groceries $520. Gas $187. Everything else was minimal. No restaurant meals, no entertainment subscriptions, no impulse purchases. They were living like they should have been living all along. I sent back a one-word response. Approved. The second month's report was similar. Third month, even leaner. I could see them cutting expenses, learning to budget, making every dollar count. The kind of financial discipline they'd never needed before because I'd always been there to catch them when they fell. Not anymore. 2 months after our agreement, I drove to their house, my house, for the first time since the foreclosure scare. I'd texted ahead, need to inspect the property. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Rachel's response was immediate. Of course, we'll make sure everything's clean. I pulled into the driveway at exactly 2 o'clock. The lawn was mowed. The garbage cans were stored properly. The exterior looked maintained. Good start. Rachel answered the door. She'd gained back some weight, I noticed. Not much, but enough that she didn't look quite so gaunt. Her eyes were clearer, less desperate. Hi, Dad. Come in. The inside was spotless. Furniture arranged neatly. Floors vacuumed. Kitchen clean. That absurd 75-inch television was gone. Sold, probably to help with expenses. Replaced with a modest 40-inch model that looked second-hand. Sean appeared from the hallway. Still looked tired, but not broken anymore. More like someone who'd been running a marathon and was finally finding his pace. Daniel, he nodded. Not warm, but respectful. Place looks good, right? I walked through slowly, checking everything. Water heater, HVAC filters, windows, plumbing, all maintained properly. They were taking care of my investment. It's acceptable? I said. Keep it this way. We will. Sean's jaw was tight, but he held my gaze. We're trying to do better, with everything. I looked at him, really looked at him. The arrogance was gone. The entitlement was gone. What remained was something harder, more grounded. I can see that, I said. Rachel appeared with a folder. This month's report. I know it's not due until Monday, but I have it ready. I took it, but didn't open it. How's work, Sean? He blinked, surprised by the personal question. Better. I got a small raise, 3%. It's not much, but it's something you earned yourself, I finished. That's what matters. Something in his expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but close. Yeah, he said quietly. Yeah, it is. I left 15 minutes later with the inspection complete and the monthly report in hand. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not satisfaction exactly, more like closure. The anger that had burned for months was gone. What remained was just the facts. They'd betrayed my trust. I'd removed my support. They'd crashed. And now they were rebuilding on their own terms, with the safety net I'd chosen to provide. Not the relationship we'd had before, but maybe something more honest. The Mustang was nearly complete. I'd finished all the mechanical work, all the body work, all the paint. What remained was just the final detailing. Polish the chrome, clean the interior, install the new carpets. I spent the next 2 weeks working on those final touches. Every evening after dinner, I'd go to the garage and work until the light faded, polishing, cleaning, perfecting. And then one evening in early September, I stepped back and looked at what I'd created. The 1967 Ford Mustang stood gleaming under the garage lights. Guardsman blue paint, mirror bright, chrome that caught every reflection, Interior restored to factory specification. Engine purring like a satisfied cat. 3 years of work, patience, attention to detail, taking something broken and making it whole again. I ran my hand along the hood and felt something settle in my chest. Complete. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Rachel. Come by this weekend, Saturday noon. Bring Sean. We'll have lunch. Her response came fast. We'd love that. Thank you, Dad. Saturday arrived clear and hot. Typical Arizona summer. I set up my patio table with hamburgers ready for the grill, potato salad in the fridge, cold drinks in the cooler, nothing fancy, just family. They arrived at exactly noon in the gray Camry, both dressed casually but neat. Rachel had brought a homemade dessert, apple pie. Sean carried a six-pack of beer, though he set it down carefully when he saw my expression. Just thought, if you wanted, he trailed off. We're good, I said, gesturing to the cooler. I've got drinks covered. We didn't talk about the house, didn't talk about the money, didn't talk about the past 4 months of financial reports and rent payments and lessons learned. Instead, we talked about small things. Rachel's job, Sean's raise, the Camry's gas mileage, the weather, normal things, family things. After lunch, Sean asked the question I'd been waiting for. So, the Mustang. I saw it in the garage. Is it finished? I stood up. Come see. I led them to the garage and hit the button to raise the door. Sunlight flooded in, catching the guardsman blue paint and making it glow like liquid sapphire. Rachel gasped. Actually gasped. Dad, it's beautiful! Sean walked around it slowly, taking in every detail. The chrome bumpers, the restored interior, the engine visible through the open hood. Daniel, this is incredible. How long did this take you? 3 years. I opened the driver's door, bought it as a rust bucket, rebuilt it piece by piece. Engine, transmission, suspension, body, interior, everything. Can I... Sean gestured hesitantly at the engine. I nodded. He leaned in, examining the carburetor, the air filter, the valve covers. I watched his face change as he recognized the quality of the work. You did all this yourself? Every bolt, every weld, every coat of paint. I ran my hand along the fender, took patience, took discipline, took refusing to cut corners even when it would have been easier. The parallel wasn't subtle. Sean caught it immediately. His expression shifted. Understanding, maybe a little shame, but also something like respect. It's perfect, he said quietly. Not perfect, but honest. Everything you see is real. No shortcuts, no borrowed time. I closed the hood gently. That's what makes it valuable. Rachel was crying silently, and I realized she understood too. The Mustang wasn't just a car. It was a metaphor for everything that had happened between us. Something broken, neglected, taken for granted, and then rebuilt, slowly, painfully, into something stronger. Want to see it run? I asked. I climbed into the driver's seat, turned the key. The engine caught immediately. That beautiful rumble of a V8 that's been properly maintained and lovingly restored. I let it idle for a moment, then revved it gently. The sound echoed through the garage like thunder. Sean's face lit up. That is one sweet sound. I shut it off and climbed out. The three of us stood there in my garage, looking at the Mustang, and for the first time in months, the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable. Listen, Sean said suddenly. I know I can't take back what I said, that text message, the way I treated you, but I want you to know, I get it now, what you were trying to teach us. We weren't standing on our own feet. We were standing on yours and pretending it was ours. I looked at him, waited. The rent we pay you now, the financial reports, the letter I wrote. He swallowed hard. At first, I hated it. Hated you for making me do it. But now I understand. You weren't trying to control us. You were trying to make us grow up. Took you long enough, I said, but there was no heat in it. Rachel stepped forward. Dad, I'm so sorry. For choosing Sean's pride over your feelings. For letting him convince me you were the problem when really we were just spoiled and ungrateful. Yes, you were, I agreed. But you're learning. The reports show it. The way you're maintaining the house shows it. The fact that you're here trying to rebuild this relationship on honest terms, that shows it too. I walked over to my workbench and pulled out the folder. The same folder that held the quitclaim deed, the financial records, and Sean's letter of apology. I opened it and looked at that letter one more time. Sean's angry handwriting, every word admitting his dependence, every line acknowledging what he'd taken for granted. I could have held this over him forever. Could have used it as a weapon any time he stepped out of line. Could have made sure he never forgot his humiliation. Instead, I folded it carefully and handed it to him. Here, this is yours now. Sean stared at the letter like it might explode. What? The lesson is over. You've learned it. Both of you have. I don't need to hold this anymore. I closed the folder. But I'm keeping the deed to the house. That doesn't change. The house is mine. You're still tenants. That's the permanent consequence of your choices. Sean opened the letter, read his own words, then slowly tore it in half, then in quarters, then into small pieces that he let fall into my garage trash can. Thank you, he said. Rachel hugged me then, tight, like she used to when she was little. I let her, one hand awkwardly patting her back. We'll keep sending the reports, she said into my shoulder, and paying rent on time, and taking care of the house. I promise. I know you will. I gently extracted myself from the hug. Because if you don't, you know exactly what I'm capable of. Sean actually laughed at that, a real laugh. Yeah, we definitely know. They stayed another hour. We sat on my patio, drinking iced tea, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across the desert landscape. The conversation was easier now, less forced. We weren't the family we'd been before. That family was gone, built on a foundation of unspoken obligations and unacknowledged dependence. But maybe we could be something better, something honest. When they finally left, Rachel hugged me again at the door. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. Even Sean shook my hand. See you next month for the inspection. I'll be there. I watched them drive away in the gray Camry. No fancy cars anymore. No lifestyle they couldn't afford. Just two people living within their means, learning to appreciate what they had instead of always wanting more. The lesson had been harsh, but it had been necessary. I went back to my garage and looked at the Mustang one more time. Then my eyes drifted to the wall where I'd hung the quitclaim deed. Legal proof that their house, the house I'd paid for, the house they'd taken for granted, was now mine. They'd tried to cut me out of their lives, tried to have independence without responsibility, tried to take everything I'd given and give nothing back, and in response, I'd taken the one thing they valued most and made it mine, not out of cruelty, not out of revenge, out of justice. They lived in my house now, followed my rules, proved themselves month by month with those financial reports. And slowly, so slowly, they were becoming the kind of people who deserved help, who understood that generosity isn't weakness, that support comes with gratitude. That family means mutual respect, not just one-way obligation. I poured myself a bourbon and sat in my leather chair, looking out at the desert sunset. The sky was doing that Arizona thing again, painting itself in impossible colors. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Thanks for today, Dad. It meant more than you know. I smiled and typed back, same time next month. The Mustang sat in my garage, fully restored. The deed hung on my wall, permanent proof of lessons learned. And somewhere across town, my daughter and son-in-law were living in my house, building a life on honest terms, finally understanding what independence really costs. I'd won, not by destroying them, but by teaching them. And that, I thought, taking a sip of bourbon, was the sweetest victory of all. The Mustang gleamed under the garage lights, complete, perfect, honest, just like justice should be. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.
왜 근데 다 방송 안 켜고 세윤 오빠만 켜져 있어? 아, 나 자려고 했는데 잠이 안 오는 거야. 딱 이렇게 다 대충 씻고 누워가지고 이제 아 조금 스맥다운님 안녕하세요. 조금 1시간만 잘까 30분만 잘까 그러고 렌즈도 다 빼고 누웠는데 잠이 안 오는 거예요. 그래서 그냥 일어났어요. 이거 짱이야. 이거 입고 나오면 춥지도 않아. 나 이제 뭐 하지? 나는 내일 모레 나갈 것 같은데? 무원님 어서오세요. 내일 모레? 아, 그리고 엄마가. 안 돼, 안 돼, 안 돼. 나 엄마가 아까 전화 왔는데 내가 몇 시까지 올 거니? 3시 그랬더니 뭐라고 하는 거야. 그래가지고 엄마 왜 화를 내? 하면서 진짜 갑자기 빡쳤잖아. 아니 그러면은 엄마가 원하는 시간에 오라고 하면 되잖아. 스트레이스.